Hey everybody, how's it going? Dan Shinder here, broadcasting to you from Globe, Arizona. Where the f*** is that? It's 100 miles east of Phoenix, up in the mountains where it's a little bit cooler than the scorching valley. And Gregg Bissonette joins us for the very first time, finally, from Los Angeles. Gregg, how are you?
I'm great, Dan. Thanks for having me.
Oh, thank you. I remember us talking a few years ago about getting together at the NAMM show, and you had your family in tow, and that was a little hard, and we blinked an eye, and all of a sudden it's like 4 or 5 years later. I don't know how that happens.
Yeah, time flies.
So for your first interview, there's so much to cover. So folks, settle in, and over the next 3 hours, wait, what? No, for about the next 50 minutes, we're going to sort of skim the stone across the pond of the Gregg Bissonette career, if you will. And where I'd like to start, Gregg, is this. I grew up in the Valley, so I'm familiar with the baked potato. And I know that you used to play at the baked potato back in the day, jazz and stuff like that. You were teaching drums at a music store in Granada Hills. In fact, your name came up the other day from my interview with Bermuda Schwartz, who talked about going there.
John Bermuda Schwartz, I love that guy.
Yeah, he's awesome. And so he brought that up. And then, you go from there to David Lee Roth, and we'll kind of cover other stuff. But let's start from that audition with David. My question is, how many other people showed up, and what was the process like?
Well, the process was, there's a big old line in front of me. There was about 10 people. I should say big old line behind me. I could see drummers, like a block. And then in front of me, there was about 10. And the first guy that came out was Matt Sorum, and Matt's a really good buddy of mine. Yeah. And Matt had played in a band with my brother, Matt, two Matts, in E.G. Daly's band. E.G. Daly was Pee Wee Herman's girlfriend in Pee Wee's Big Adventure. She was Dottie. Yeah. Daddy, my bike! He stole my bike! So they were in her band, and I see Matt walk out. He wasn't with the Cult or Guns N' Roses or anything. It was 1985. I said, Matt, hey, how's it going? And he goes, man. He kind of has that, man, they wanted me to play double bass. I don't really play double bass. So I'm standing in line going, double bass, okay, get my feet going, warm up the feet, And another guy came out who I knew from North Texas State, a good friend of mine, Russ McKinnon, who went on to play with all kinds of bands, but for the longest time with Barry Manilow. Right. And I see Russ McKinnon walking out. I said, Russ, how'd it go? He said, Gregg. He said, they said I didn't hit hard enough. So I'm going, hit hard. Man. Yeah.
Sorry, I got an echo going. Sorry about that. So you were getting some tips while you're waiting in.
Yeah, I was kind of, trying to load the dice with asking, what was going on. And another guy said that I didn't know. I heard another guy come out and complain to somebody in front of me. They wanted me to retain all this crazy rhythmic stuff because Steve Vai played with Zappa, and they had all these. So I had my friend Mark Cranny, dear friend of mine, roommate, pal, Gino Vanelli, brother to brother, one of my heroes. He loaned me one of his snare drums to take with me, and I had a Sharpie because all good drummers have black Sharpies in their back pocket. So I decided I had a white Remo coated head on my snare. I'm just going to use that as a chalkboard with my black Sharpie, and I'll write these ideas down. So the first thing is I walked in and said hi to Billy and Steve. I was fans of both of them. Billy from Talus and Billy Sheehan from Talus, and Steve Vai from Frank Zappa.
Yeah.
And I think half the skills, Dan, are just people skills. Like, are you so nervous that you're looking down, or complaining about the drums? They're not the way I set them up. I just started setting up the drums kind of the way I wanted. Hey, Billy, I'm a big fan of yours, man. You're so great with Talus, and I'm so glad I heard David Lee Roth picked you first. And then you guys got Steve. Steve, I saw you at the Club Lingerie with your solo band. Chris Frazier, a great drummer playing drums, and saw you with Zappa, and you transcribed the Black Page. So I'm just being a nice guy, because that's half the battle. If you're a nice guy, people want to hang out with nice guys.
Right.
So then they said, play a drum solo right out of the chute. Play a drum solo. So of course, it's 1985. What came out in 1984? And they go, wow, cool, you know Hot for Teacher. And I said, what drummer doesn't know Hot for Teacher? And we laughed. And then Steve, they had already written a song called Hot Dog and a Shake, which came out not on the first album, Eat 'em and Smile, but the second album, Skyscraper.
Right.
This one right here, there. And so basically I just said, let me get my Sharpie. And Steve, I said, wow, you know how to transcribe? I said, yeah. He goes, where'd you go to college? I said, North Texas. He said, I went to Berkeley. I said, I know you did. And I know you transcribed The Black Page with Bozio. And I know that, you know, I know you're all about, you know, transcribing and writing. You've got books out. He said, man, I like you. I like the way you play. The fact that you can transcribe, we can work a lot faster. You have my vote. Billy said, you have my vote. And the next day we went down to Dave's place in the basement and we're practicing. And Dave said, how'd you learn all these songs so quickly? I said, well, Steve gave me a cassette of you guys rehearsing. So I charted out about 12 songs. He goes, you charted out, you write music? I said, well, I don't write a lot of music, but I transcribe drum parts. And so, and then he said, well, who was your last gig? And I said, well, the last person I was in a band with was Gino Vanelli, and I didn't think he'd know who Gino Vanelli was. And he goes, yeah, Gino Vanelli, I just want to stop, brother to brother. He's a musicologist. Then he said, what about before that? And I thought, man, Dan, I thought I'm dead in the water. Maynard Ferguson.
I knew you were going to say that.
Yeah, I thought for sure I'd be, you know, labeled a jazz guy.
A jazz guy.
Can't play an urban. He said, Maynard Ferguson, the great jazz high note trumpet player that covered Herbie Hancock's Chameleon and theme from Rocky. I said, yeah. He said, if you can power that band, you can power the four of us. Welcome to the band. Payday starts Friday. Let's go get some Mexican food.
Wow. I love it.
That
Now,
was it.
the whole point of why I wanted you to tell that story is, of course, it's very entertaining. It's nostalgic. It was the fuse that lit the rocket in a lot of ways to your career. But most importantly, the takeaway for everybody watching, whether you're a drummer, accordion player, kazoo player, sax player, whatever, it is about chemistry and about being easy to work with and hang with and being prepared and really doing your homework and your research. And that started when you were in line for the first audition, which I just admire so much.
Thank you,
so
Dan.
much, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, and then
Thank
you did
you.
3 great albums and world tours, and that must have really been something, especially back then, mid-80s.
7 years of just having a blast. My first glimpse at touring arenas and tour buses and first class hotels and great fans and killer music and, you know, just really doing it up, man. I think about those days all the time.
That's really cool. It's great that you're reflective on that, because I think it's important that we are reflective on things like that, whether they go well or not. You know, we bring those lessons with us, and sometimes the best drum lessons don't happen just sitting at a kit or a practice pad, and that's why I come up with this show, so that people can learn from other people's experiences and perspectives. I'd like to ask about another experience kind of similar to that, and then we'll cover some ground in between and talk about anything you want that you're doing now. But to get tapped to play in Ringo Starr's band, like, I've got 50 questions around that, so why don't you just answer whatever you want in regard to that. And I'd like to also insert something with that, Greg, is, you know, a lot of drummers who don't get it, and a lot of other musicians and music fans, give Ringo a lot of grief. And not just Ringo, but like Nick Mason of Pink Floyd and Charlie Watts, you know, drummers that get, and trumpers that get labeled for being simplistic and, oh, they were just in the right place at the right time. Please explain, being the guy who plays in Ringo's band and plays that music, how that is challenging and why that should not be taken for granted, as well as how you got that position, please.
Well, let me start with how I got the position. So I'm a big believer in loving different styles of music. And my favorite style of music is the Beatles, pop, rock, British Invasion, Beatlemania. Ringo was always my favorite drummer because he played the right part for the song, the part that made the song really work on any of the game-changing beats, whether it was this one or Tomorrow Never Knows, or if it was Ticket to Ride, or the drum solo in the end, or In My Life, one hi-hat per bar.
Yeah.
All those beats, those songs wouldn't be the same beats. And anybody that says that first of all, that's not simple. There's nothing simple about that. And simple, I mean, AC/DC is simple.
Right.
One of my favorite bands in the world. So I don't buy into the whole simple thing. I mean, what does that mean? When you get a gig, you're going to be going, can I get the gig? No, who wants to play with a drummer like that?
Right.
So there's always going to be a chance to solo and do fun, fast stuff, but that's not why I want to be in a band. And Ringo made me want to get in a band and still be in a band to this day. So it was midnight in 2003. And I had been sending, as you do, demo tapes to Ringo's producer, Mark Hudson, because I knew if it ever came up where Sheila E. couldn't do a tour, or Simon Kirke from Bad Company, or Keltner, or his son Zach, or anybody couldn't do a tour, that I sure would love to be in that band. So I had a band, a Beatle tribute band, with my brother Matt and with Brett Tuggle and Rocket Rashad, called The Lads. And I was always trying to get Mark Hudson, great singer, writer, producer, guitar player, everything, to come down, and he never could because he's really busy. He was the musical director on the Joan Rivers show with Vinny and Jimmy Johnson. He's producing all these people. So he's producing Steven Tyler with Aerosmith, and I get this call because Bruce Sugar, Ringo's engineer now, who was Mark's engineer, I'd done a bunch of commercials with him, jingles and stuff. So we had a good rapport. And he said, Gregg's a Beatle fanatic, man. No, he didn't say that. He said, Gregg's a good drummer. He'll do good on this song for Steven Tyler. Mark was producing a Steven Tyler thing. So he said, hey, man, we need you down here. We got the Steven Tyler song. I said, man, I'll be there at 10 a.m. because I'm in Westlake. He's in Santa Monica. He said, well, we need you now. I said, oh, I'll be there at 9 a.m. He goes, bro, we need you now. Ringo's drums are still set up from the session we did last week, finishing up his album I produced, Ringo Rama. You can play on his drums. I'll be right there.
Fire up the helicopter.
And I get there, and I don't play this for a half hour, to get sounds. I play every Ringo game-changing, great breakthrough beat he ever did. Right. And Mark comes in the room, and he said, man, I've heard for years that you're a Ringo fanatic, and now I can see you really are. And so basically, his son Zach, Ringo's son Zach, might be going out with The Who, and might not be able to do this promo tour for his other band, Ringo and the Roundheads. And if he can't do the tour, I'm going to recommend you. I said, and that's how it works? He said, yeah. Ringo trusts me. I'm his producer. And does your brother have a Hofner bass? And I said, does Dolly Parton sleep on her back? Yes. What bass player that loves the Beatles and has a Beatle tribute band doesn't have a Hofner bass?
Right, exactly.
So he goes, tell him he's got the gig too if it works out. So a week later, Mark called and said, man, Zach's out with The Who. You got the gig. And then with the All-Star Band, I was joking with Ringo, and he said, I love double drumming with you. This is like a couple years later. I'd love to have you in the All-Star Band someday, but you have to have a couple, 2 or 3 hits that were top 10 hits that you sing. And I joked, and I said, yeah, that'll never happen. And through a lot of prayer, Dan, I'm a big believer in prayer. I prayed so hard, Lord, I want to play with do Ringo's All-Star Band someday. Just like I prayed to be in David Lee Roth's band. I don't want to be labeled a jazz guy. I want to be in a band like Journey, Van Halen, or Genesis, and I get the gig with Dave. And just before that, I prayed all through middle school and high school. I want to play drums for Maynard's band. And I believe God gives you the talent. You can make it or break it with your practicing and your work ethic and everything else. But I just felt if it was God's will, why not just, pray, ask, and it'll be, knock and the door can be open. I pray about everything. I'm a big believer as a Christian man in prayer. And that's just something that is very personal to me. I pray about people. I pray about the world. I pray about my kids. I pray about my family. But I'm not afraid to just say, God, I'd really love to get this gig with Ringo. And I got a call, and I got the gig with Ringo. It's like, wow. I really work hard at it. I love it. And that was my will, and it was in line, I guess, with God's will. So anyway, that's my story.
And it's been like 17 years, right?
17 years since '03 and the Ringo and the Roundheads, and 12 years since I've been in the Ringo All-Star Band. His attorney, Bruce, said, Ringo said he's run out of drummers he wants to play with that have hit songs. He wants you in the All-Star Band. Wow! Thank you, God. So,
you mentioned, I just want to touch on Zach Starkey real quickly.
Yeah.
You mentioned Zach. I'm a big Who fan, and I love Kenny Jones. I love Simon Phillips. But I must say, I think Zach is the best drummer for The Who that The Who has had to play the Keith Moon music era of, right? He's just amazing. When they played that Super Bowl show and the cameras were right up in his kit and everything, you really got to see his mechanics, and it was like Keith Moon with finesse. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and he's so musical. And Ringo's his dad, so he's got that swing. And Keith Moon, Ringo asked Keith Moon to be Zach's godfather when Zach was born. And Ringo got Zach a kit, but then Uncle Keith happened to send this truck with this huge kit. Look at what Uncle Keith sent. But Ringo jokes that he gave Zach his first drum lesson saying, I'm going to show you the beat. And I said, which beat, Ringo? He goes, the beat. Oh, the beat. And it's this. And after a week or so, Zach really got it down. So he said, I showed him the other beat. And I said, what other beat? A bossa nova? He loves Cozy Cole and Gene Krupa. I was like this. He said, no, the other beat. The bump bump. He said he got that. That's all I ever showed him. And then
the training wheels were off at that point, right?
And he told me one time, I said, I got a question for you, man. I said, when I was a kid listening to Long Tall Sally, on the end of that, I'm hearing cymbal, tom-tom, snare drum, bass drum, all in sextuplets. Biddly, 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 biddly. We're going to have some fun tonight. Woo! And I'm hearing all these things going. He didn't have overdubs. What was going on? He said, I'm glad you asked me that. He said, I'm left-handed, I said, I know what you had for breakfast, December 8th, 1965. I know you're left-handed. So he said, I start with my left hand on this crash cymbal with a bass drum. So I'll do hi-hat. And then I do a floor tom. And then a snare. Then I do this crash cymbal. I'll use my muted one with the pillowcase on it. And then a snare. So it's this. Some fun tonight. And he said, when I wanted the girls to scream, I put my head down. So he gave me a lesson. It was so cool.
That is cool. And Craig, thanks for pointing that out, because I think a lot of music fans and drummers and other musicians don't know that Ringo's left-handed and set up right-handed and played that way.
Well, it's those same people that don't know Ringo's left-handed, that don't know that if you play in the groove, when you come up with cool parts, you are going to be in the band and be a great drummer. It's those same people that don't know anything about what's going on in the world because they listen to 30 seconds of CNN and they think they know everything. So it's like, if you don't pay attention and go deep in the weeds on Ringo, you're not going to really get it. So, what are you going to do? You can't, you can't change their outlook. I know there's so many. I've had jazz players come in for lessons and say, I want to be a rock drummer. And I say, oh, do you like rock music? Do you like the Beatles, the Stones, Led Zeppelin, Jimi Hendrix, AC/DC, the Police, the Foo Fighters? No, I wouldn't listen to any of that music. I don't like that music. Why do you want to be a rock drummer? Well, I hear that rock drummers make a lot more money on tour than jazz drummers. What are you talking about? I've had rock drummers say, I want to play jazz. And I say, oh, do you like jazz? Do you listen to Benny Goodman, Gene Krupa, Charlie Parker, Buddy Rich, John Coltrane, Miles Davis, Weather Report? I don't know who any of those are. Why do you want to play jazz? And Dan, like you said, the baked potato. Well, I go to this little jazz club on Cahuenga in North Hollywood called the Baked Potato, and everybody's screaming when the drummer plays cool licks, and they stand up and applaud when it's a drum solo. They don't do that for me on my rock gigs. I said, that's why you want to play jazz? Is so people at the Baked Potato will scream and stand up for you? I said, you got to like the music, man.
Yeah.
If you don't like jazz, you're not going to play jazz well. If you don't like rock or pop or Afro-Cuban or Brazilian sambas or country, you're not going to play that well. You got to like the music first.
Yeah. Love what you do and do what you love, and let that fill your heart and be the best you can at it.
Amen.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to go to the audience and let's see if anyone has some questions. I've got some questions, but let me rewind in the comments here.
Rewind. How old are you?
57.
I'm 61. I got you by 4 years, but that's one of my terms. Dad, why are you saying rewind? It's not tape anymore.
That's true. Don Garrett. Hey, Don Garrett's on board. Don says, I don't think people realize what kind of talent was in the David Lee Roth band. Gregg Bissonette, Billy Sheehan, and Steve Vai. From a lifelong musician, much love and respect from Don Garrett. Very cool.
Thank you so much, man. Thanks for saying that, buddy.
Yeah, thanks everyone for joining us. I'm going to send Craig the link afterwards so he can look through a lot of these wonderfully complimentary comments that are here.
Oh.
Let's see, we've got James B. Harrison says, Gregg Bissonette do a day of percussion once. Great guy, great drummer, and it's always fun to talk about drumming influences. Yeah, I love that topic. Jules Radino from Bloister Cult.
Hey, Jules!
He says, try
Go
playing...
feed the Reaper, buddy.
Yeah, he says, try playing a Beatles song on drums. I'm still working on that swing straight feel. Absolutely. It is.
Jules is a great friend of mine and a great drummer.
He is.
And he's a great people person. He can play anything. We met at Don Bennett's drum show years ago. He's another Dixon and Dorsey like I am. We talk about gigs. We talk about life. He gets it. He's a band guy, but the guy can solo and play anything. And his son is a great drummer too.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you, is a family guy too, and like me.
You have a family? You have kids and stuff?
Yeah, my wife and I have a blended family of 11 kids and 19 grandkids. Yeah, crazy.
Wow. Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. Here's a question from John Kinsting, who does a series on Drum Talk TV. And John says, question, Greg, did you have a petrified awe moment when you first met Ringo?
Oh, I sure did. Thank you for that question. My dad was my drum tech. My dad was my first drum teacher, and he was my drum tech, and my mom would, before there were iPhones and phone guides about how to make a left on Cahuenga. You know, my mom had the Thomas Brothers map. So she directed my dad how to get to the rehearsal studio in Santa Monica, where I was going to be playing drums for the first time next to Ringo, and my brother's playing bass. The first song we did was I Want to Be Your Man. We played double drums. As soon as I pull up, my dad comes to my car. He goes, you're not going to believe this. Your drums are 5 feet away from Ringo's Ludwig drums, man. My dad, who took me to see the Beatles when I was 7 as a kid in Detroit at the Olympia Hockey Arena where the Red Wings played hockey, he says, your drums are 5 feet away. I said, oh, Dad, this is so cool. And I go in, and there's his drums. And I sit down, and he walks in, and I go to shake Ringo's hand. He's not a big handshaking guy. He's rather a hugger. You know, he says, I'm a hug guy. He gives me a hug, Dan. He says, I said, thank you so much for letting me be in the Roundheads with you. He says, I hear you go around the world and have for many years telling people how great I am. You got to be in the band. Thank you, Jesus.
That's great. I just love it. Folks, if you have more questions, Giampero Franco says, Gregg Bissonette, explain the intro of Drive My Car. That's a great question.
That is a great question. I never knew that for all the years growing up until I got in this Beatle band. And we don't dress up and stuff. We don't have the band playing too much anymore. The leader of the band, Brett Tuggle, he's been with Fleetwood Mac for 18 years. He's on the road a lot. My brother, the bass player in the band, he's Elton John's bass player for the last 9 years, so he's always gone. And the guitar player, Rocket, he's got stuff going on. I got stuff going. The band hasn't played a lot in the last 20 years, but when I was writing out those charts, I was like, how does this intro go? Ask a girl what she wanted to be. I'm going, how does that go? How does that go? And it's hard. Like with Stuart Copeland, another one of our heroes.
Yeah.
Well, how does that, where's one? Where's one? Where's one? So finally I figured out that it's 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1 and 2 and 3, 4, and 1 and 2 and 3, 4.
Yeah.
1, 2. So I just go 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. So it starts like that.
Very cool. Very cool. Great question. Thanks for bringing that up. Douglas Reed says, Greg, I bet you know you're blessed to be still performing and playing at the level you are, considering all those wild nights of your youth. Were there any?
Well, define wild nights.
Maybe that's what he's asking you to do.
So I'll define wild nights.
There you go.
As a teenager, my brother and I, we had a band in Detroit called Grand Circus Park. And we all had girlfriends. The girlfriends would sit in front of our big PVPA, and each one of them would position themselves in front of, like my brother's girlfriend would turn up his vocals. My girlfriend Jan would turn up my vocals. The guitar player would turn up his guitar. And so it wasn't really wild because, we all had girlfriends in high school, so we weren't out there trying to be, prima donna band guys that were trying to be, just crazy. And I grew up in Detroit, big beer drinking towns. I was never a drug guy. I would drink beer in Michigan and go to football games and that kind of thing. But with David Lee Roth, same kind of thing. I was never a drug guy. So I was more like, some red wine after a show. And then we always had these fun parties where people could come back, our guests could come back, and we had music going. We had our own sound system we traveled with, and palm trees, a whole
like a set.
A whole set, like in a big trailer, like a big semi, filled with sound equipment, gelled lights and palm trees for our backstage show. If we played the Forum and we'd be in the Lakers dressing room, then the guest dressing room would be our after show. So there were fun parties and we hung out and had a blast. But as far as wild nights, I mean, I watched like the Motley Crue documentary. I'm just going, I wasn't that guy. I want to live to be 100. Ringo's my hero. He's exercising more than anybody I know, eats healthier than anybody I know, super positive, peace and love, having peace, having love, treating other people the way you wish they would treat you.
Yes.
And I want to live a long, healthy life. My son's 22, my daughter's 19. I'm 61. I want to live 39 more years and be 100 so I can just enjoy things. I was talking to a friend of mine, I won't mention his name, about a year ago at a recording session. I said, man, you're 10 years older than me. It's a bass player friend of mine. And I said, you don't drink, you don't do drugs, you don't smoke cigarettes, you don't do any of that, but you played with this person in the 60s, these people in the 70s. He said, I saw all those people, artists I worked with, and they couldn't remember things. They couldn't remember chunks of their life. They couldn't remember what happened the night before. He said, I love my life. He said, I want to embrace every second of my life. I want to have crystal clear Technicolor memories. And like you said, reminiscing earlier, that's what we have. We have our memories. Right. And sometimes I just sit down and I go, man, I'm going to think about some of the times I had with Maynard Ferguson or with David Lee Roth or with Ringo or with Gino Vanelli or on the Santana album or when my son was born, when my daughter was born. I mean, these are memories that, why would you want to clock out?
Yeah.
Why would you drugs or be drunk or be on medication where you put a cloud around you and you don't remember that stuff?
Exactly.
Not the way I want to live.
Yeah, growing up, I was in, like most musicians. I was in rock bands and stuff growing up, and I played up and down the Sunset Strip in Hollywood and all of that. And I never, when I would go see my favorite bands at the Forum or Long Beach Arena, Rush, Zeppelin, Genesis, Queen, on and on. I never, ever drank or got high at concerts because I wanted to remember and I could tell you the set list of almost every concert I've seen. And I love that. And I also got blamed for being the boring guy backstage after shows because I'd be this animal on stage and then they'd find me at the backstage party. Everyone's hooting, hollering, doing all this. I'd be sitting over there talking to just one person.
Well,
I'm not that
guy. I'm not that. That's cool that you had your vibe, but I am the opposite of that. I am a coffee. My drug is coffee, kind of like Dave Grohl. Fresh Pops. I drink so much coffee in a day. I'm hyper anyway.
Yeah, I can't. That's why I don't.
Well, I like being more hyper, Dan. I don't like being, like, to me, alcohol would just make me tired. I want to be up. I'm not going to do drugs to be up, but I drink coffee and I get 8 hours sleep. I exercise a lot, but I drink a lot of coffee. And backstage, I would be hooping and hollering and dancing and making politically incorrect jokes and just trying to be a funny guy, the court jester. And people would say, man, you're lucky you don't do drugs because you'd be dead by now because I'm a knucklehead. I'm just kind of always.
Yeah, I morphed into that as I got older. That's funny. But I don't drink coffee because I'd be on a string up in the air. I just naturally like that. But that's awesome. Gregg, you've made dozens and dozens and dozens of albums with so many different types of artists. We talked about Ringo, talked about David Lee Roth, Maynard Ferguson, a lot of stuff with Steve Vai. You've played with Pat Boone. You've played with Barry Manilow. All these different artists. What are 2 or 3 of the most challenging projects that you were part of? And what was it about the project that made it challenging?
To this day, I still think the hardest, most challenging gig I ever did, and I wrote out charts that were so long, I had to duct tape them from this tom across here all the way down to there just to get through it with odd times, tempo changes, cues. It was the Keith Emerson band.
Oh. Yeah.
I love Keith. We were really good friends. But the first gig I played with them, I was really, really nervous. And it was at a NAMM show banquet in this huge ballroom, thousands of people. And we did the sound check. And after the sound check was over, my phone rang, and my great friend Stan Lynch, who was the drummer in Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, he was producing Don Henley. And I loved the Eagles, loved Don Henley's voice, loved Don Henley's drummer. He said, man, I'm in the studio with Henley. He wants you to come in and play on a song. I said, when? He goes, now. I said, well, it's 4 o'clock. I'm down in Anaheim. No, the NAMM show was in LA then, Convention Center.
Oh.
He said, we're at the studio called Royal Tone in North Hollywood, Studio City. He said, can you just get over here now? And I said, I'm leaving right now. I don't say it to anybody where I'm going. I don't get any food and hang out. I just get in my car. I tell my dad, who's my tech, I said, Dad, if I'm not back, find somebody that can read charts really well, right? So I bolt down there. I meet Henley. I do a couple of songs. And one of them was this one. It's called Inside Job.
Yeah.
No, it's called Working It on the album Inside Job.
Yeah.
And Don and Stan are great teams, and they're best friends, and they're super great guys. And so Stan brought me in on several Don Henley things. But then I do that, and I bolt back. I get there about 7:30. We start at 8, and I'm reading these charts. And Keith Emerson says, so when I jump, then we're going to do that new tempo. So in the sound check, he jumps, and he hits the ground, and I start, and he goes, no, when I jump. I said, yeah. Cool.
He meant when he goes up, right?
When I go up. I said, are you kidding me?
Talk about an upbeat. Yeah.
Talk about an upbeat. So anyway, it was super fun, but I was sweating bullets. It was intense.
Hilarious.
It went off really well. I had them all.
That's awesome. Keith is one of my favorite musicians ever. And I had the honor of meeting him when I interviewed Carl Palmer about 6 years ago at Carl's art opening in Beverly Hills. And Keith was there, and I got to spend some time with him. And an amazing musician and such a nice man. What a
Really
loss.
nice man. Really. I got to do his album, the Keith Emerson Band featuring Mark Bonilla.
Oh,
Boy,
yes.
was that fun. That was a
Yes.
blast.
Yeah. Greg, what do you think about when we look at today's drumming, and you've been around a little bit, has drumming evolved, or has there simply been over the last 10, 15 years an infusion of new techniques and styles that have branched it out, or both? Is it
Okay, great question. I think it's definitely evolved. I mean, I spent time practicing Thomas Haka, Meshuggah, Bleed, I practiced playing along with Mike Mitchell drum solos. That Mike Mitchell compilation on YouTube.
Yeah.
All you gotta do is watch a minute of that and your mind is blown. I first met Mike when he was 11 at the Drummers for Jesus Festival in Dallas. He came up and played. I was like, who is this guy? And Mike Mitchell, check out the new Stanley Clarke album. Mike Mitchell has evolved drumming, okay? So everybody's evolving it, making it better. We've already got what we've got, so that's never going to go away. It's like when somebody remixes Sgt. Pepper and one of the old engineers goes, no, you can't do that. And like Ringo says, you've still got Sgt. Pepper. It's not going anywhere. Now you have a remixed version where on some of these early Beatle tracks, now you can hear my kick drum. So the old stuff's not going to go away.
Right.
Things can evolve. But what I think has devolved, because I love YouTube, I love Drum Channel. I have my own drum school on Drum Channel. I'd like to pimp that out a little bit. Drum School, Gregg Bissonette Drum School. Just go to my website, greggbissonette.com, or go to Drum Channel and /Greg. You can join my drum school. I've been working on it for 10 years with my great friend Don Lombardi. We've filmed tons of stuff. It's a great thing, I think. But
Yeah.
there's great things about the internet and what we're doing right now. But one of the downfalls and where I think drummers have devolved is, and there's nothing I got nothing against people liking something and doing a cover version of it and posting it and getting a gazillion hits and sponsors and making money. But they're playing to a track. They're not playing with other musicians. And I say to some of these players around the world, you're posting things every day, but do you ever play with a bass player in a room that has a heartbeat? If they don't have a heartbeat, first rule, don't play with them because they're dead. But then you gotta have a guitar player, maybe a keyboard player, maybe a singer, maybe a horn section. Play with other musicians because you might think your time is great when you're following a -1 track on YouTube and you're posting some cover. But the minute you play with other musicians, your time is
It's a whole
really
different
put to the
experience.
test. So you got to play. People like Ringo says. Ringo told me he never just sat down on the drums and went. He said, I never played on the drums unless I was playing with other guys. I said, you never did? He said,
Wow.
no, why would I? And I thought, that's so great. Why would he? He learned to play playing with other musicians. So if you can't play with other musicians, to me, you're not really doing what I always wanted to do, be in a band.
Right. And when you play with other musicians, you get to have, and I'm going to bold, underline, italicize the word, healthy musical arguments. We can talk about, no, this is how the bridge, whether it's your own stuff or something you're covering, no, the bridge goes like this. No, it doesn't. It goes like this. Listen to it again. Or if you're creating, those are really good experiences to have. And you're missing that when it's great to play to stuff and emulate other drummers and put those tools in your toolbox. But like you're saying, Greg, first of all, learn to play where there's no safety net under your timekeeping and learn to create and get functional with other musicians.
I agree. The word you just said, timekeeping, I always like to log the tempos in a set. I get the record tempo, live tempo, and I have a little thing. No matter what band I play with, I'll have like 30 songs on the list, and I'll have the tempos there, and I have a little rhythm watch, a little in ear, and I'll hear, okay, everybody ready? Here we go. And I'll turn it off, count the band in. At least I know we're starting at the same tempo. Now, if you're playing with a bass player whose girlfriend just broke up with him and he's in a bad mood and he's sad and he's going boom, 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 you got to work extra hard to keep that
Pull
tempo.
them up the hill.
pulling up the hill. Your guitar player just went to Starbucks and had a triple mocha choca latte yaya, and he's bouncing off the walls and kind of like John Bonham and Jimmy Page. Jimmy Page is always on top, and that makes John Bonham sound even heavier because he's locking it down. Jimmy Page didn't mess with John Bonham's time, and that was the beauty of Led Zeppelin, that combination of the parts. John Paul Jones, Robert Plant, Jimmy Page, they were a sum of their parts. But you have to deal with that guitar player who's rushing, or the keyboard player that's whatever, or attitudes. And you just have to learn how to be in a band and keep the tempo. Nothing is more important as a drummer than counting off the song at the right tempo, keeping it the right tempo, and just dynamics and leading into the sections. It's not simple drumming, it's song drumming.
Right. Absolutely. Just a couple other questions. Ooh, let me check the comments real quick. So a good friend of mine in Germany, Yuval Ron, he's an awesome progressive guitar player, and he had Marco Miniman play on his last album, actually. And he says, love your playing, Greg, in so many Golden Fusion and rock albums. So that's a really great compliment from a really good musician.
He must be a beast, because Marco is a great friend of mine. And I first met Marco when he was first coming on the scene. Now there's a guy that has taken, Marco Miniman has taken the drumming game to a much higher level. Right. So many people have. Vinnie Colaiuta has, Steve Gadd. I tell people about the game changers, the drummers there's a lot of great drummers and a lot of great drummers that can do a lot of things. And I've never tried to be the greatest drummer at any one thing, but I want to be really great at everything. But I haven't changed the game. There's drummers like Gene Krupa. The game changers to me are like Buddy Rich, Gene Krupa, Elvin Jones, Tony Williams, Steve Gadd, Billy Cobham, Stuart Copeland, Ringo, Keith Moon, Neil Peart, Vinnie Colaiuta. These guys changed the game, man. Yeah. But guys like Marco Miniman, guys like Mike Mitchell or Thomas Lang or Virgil Donati or Terry Bozzio. Terry's a game changer. Yeah. There's a lot of game changers, but it's definitely getting better. We've always got Chick Webb. Chick's history isn't going anywhere. Right. But now we've got Mike Mitchell. You know, so what could be better? We're adding things to it. Just play with people. Get out and jam together. Play with live musicians,
Of all the old greats, I have to give a shout out to somebody who, when I watch his drum solo from, I think it's 1957, it literally bends my brain into a whole other shape, and that's Papa Joe Jones. He was amazing.
Caravan,
that smiling. Yeah, his finger work without the sticks and the karate chopping and just and so musical. And that smile. Just
and that smile. And what about Sonny Payne?
Sonny Payne. And how'd those guys do all that in a freaking suit with one microphone on the kit, and it sounds amazing, right?
Absolutely. So, and that's one side of the coin. Sonny Payne drum solo, if you can gravitate to trying to figure one iota of that stuff out, great. But at the same time, try to figure out, Simon Kirk playing quarter notes on All Right Now.
Right.
Learn from everybody, because I think that's the way I've never had a paper route. I never worked at Starbucks. I never did anything but play the drums. And I think that's one of the main reasons at 61, I still work a lot. Is because I like all kinds of music.
Yeah,
I don't necessarily love all styles of vocals, like super hardcore satanic death metal. Not my jam.
You mean like Cookie Monster vocals?
Cookie Monster vocals scare me. Okay, but I love the drumming. I can't hang with Meshuggah's vocals for too long, but I can sure hang with Thomas Hawka.
How about Ray Hearn of Haken?
I don't know who that is.
Okay, I'll send you a link to their album Vector. Oh, it's amazing.
What's your Vector, Victor?
It's really musical, artsy, progressive metal, and with so much taste. They are so good. 2 guitar players, bass, vocals, keyboards, and Ray Hearn on drums. I'll send you a link. No Cookie Monster. Really good stuff.
And the same thing goes for me with, I love hip hop grooves. I love Questlove. I love Chris Dave. I love so many drummers that can just play, the whole drunk drumming. It's not something I work hours on every day, but it's something I want to know how to kind of do a little, because you do a session, somebody goes, I'll do some of that Questlove drunk drumming thing. You'll hear him talk about how he worked for 3 years trying to figure out how to do that really well. The D'Angelo record, all that stuff.
Right.
But I don't really love super hardcore F-bombs, degrading women, drive-by shooting kind of lyrics. It's just not my scene, but I love those grooves. I love the beats.
Yeah.
So I try to zero in on the drums, and I say to everybody, I think you should love all kinds of music, all kinds of drumming. You don't have to love the message of every song or the intent or the explicitness of it or whatever it is, but you got to love the drumming.
Yeah, and pull from it, even if it's not your thing to play. And it's also important to remember that if you like heavy metal, let's take Iron Maiden. Nico McBrain, his biggest influence was Ringo Starr. And it's important to know who your heroes were influenced by, no matter what generation you're in, because you might be surprised when you dig down into that garden and see where those seeds were planted.
Absolutely. I was driving in my son's car, 22 years old, yesterday, and his playlist comes up and Run to the Hills comes on. I said, Noah, you're a Maiden fan? He goes, definitely. Run to the Hills, come on. And so I said, Nico's one of my best pals. He's an amazing drummer. Really? You know that guy? I said, we were on tour for months over in Europe with the Iron Maiden Monsters of Rock tour. It was Monsters of Rock, David Lee Roth, Kiss before they put their makeup on, Megadeth, a new band called Guns N' Roses. I said, I love Nico. He's
great.
He's great.
Yeah. We're almost out of time, so I want to make sure I get this question in. And Gregg, again, thank you for spending so much time with us, and I'd love to do this again. You've got such a deep career. We can learn so much from your experience, and that's what this is all about. My last question is, and folks, keep the questions coming. I'm going to send Gregg the link, and he'll comb through this over time, but this is the Gregg Bissonette fun fact question. When you're not playing music, and I know that doesn't leave a lot of time, when you're not playing music and you're not sleeping, what do you like to do? How do you like to spend your time? Let us get to know you a little bit when you're not doing anything related to music.
For me, it's God, my kids, my family, playing drums, playing with Ringo, and baseball in the LA Dodgers.
Oh, whoa, go Dodger Blue. Nice.
My son and daughter and I have not missed one Dodger game in the last 5 years, thanks to Spectrum TV here with 24/7 Dodgers on Channel 68. I can ride my exercise bike and watch it. I can be in New Zealand at the gym on the treadmill watching with my MLB app, the Dodgers. I go to the games a lot. I got a great pal. He's a really good drummer, but he's taken care of the Dodgers equipment scene for like 44 years. Jerry Turner, he gets my kids and I into games. One of my other best friends, Luca Podesta, he's a sports medicine doctor. He was the doctor for the Dodgers for 16 years.
Yeah.
So you get going on and you go see Luca. As a kid, it was either play the drums or go out and play baseball. So I love baseball.
Very cool, very cool. Folks, thanks so much for joining Gregg Bissonette and myself here.
Thank you.
On Drum Talk TV. And thanks if you've watched this on the archive. And we will do this again with you, Gregg. I really appreciate it. Hang on the line. And folks, thank you so much. I'll be doing my Dan's Almost Daily vlog at 2:15 Pacific today, which is 5:15 Eastern. And we got,
Could I make sure to give that address again? I think I gave it wrong.
Please.
So my drum school is Drum Channel /Gregg, and it's called the Gregg Bissonette Drum School. And you can go to my website, just greggbissonette.com, and you can sign up for it there too. I really believe in this drum school, and I also believe in something else I'm doing called the Dream Band. It's Billy Sheehan, Steve Morse, Mark Rivera, and I, and we have an online Dream Band where we coach you in a band where we send in and we do tracks together.
Great. That sounds like so much fun.
It's all on my website.
I'm interviewing...
Didn't mean to interrupt.
Cool. I'm interviewing someone in September I just spoke to yesterday. He's kind of a new guy on the scene. You like discovering new drummers, right?
I do.
Yeah. I don't know if this guy's really going to end up making a name for himself or
Yeah,
anything, but I
yeah.
like him. His name's Steve
Yeah.
Gadd.
I've
And,
never heard of him, but that's an interesting name, Gadd.
He's an up and comer.
My dad, I told Steve this a couple months ago. I said, he said, I miss your dad because Steve's a people guy. He goes,
Yeah.
what I love about you is your dad, Bud. I know he passed away. And I said, my dad felt so bad because somebody told him that Gadd was short for Gaddian, and he was Armenian. And my dad's best friend growing up was Armenian. So my dad figured out how to say, how you doing? In Armenian, you say, Etchpases, and they say, Shadlam, or whatever. So my dad, we're doing Buddy Rich's memorial thing. We're at the Guitar Center, we're signing autographs, and I'm next to Gadd, and my dad walks up to Gadd and goes, Steve, Etchpases. And Steve says, what? He says, Etchpases. And Steve says, Bud, I don't know what you're talking about. He goes, you're Armenian, right? He said, I'm not Armenian, I'm a Dago. I'm Italian.
That's
Steve
so funny.
we laugh our butts off when we talk about one of the total game changers of all time. You could think forever on, everything from this. Right. You could go for hours on how he changed the game. Please say a big hello to Steve from me and tell him thanks for always being so cool to my dad, Bud.
I will. I absolutely will. Thanks so much, Greg, and thank you, everybody. We will see you all soon.
Dodgers are going to